My name is Devin Desjardins. For people who have not met me before, I am the Director of Marketing and Storytelling at United Way. I speak to many of you on a frequent basis about your storytelling efforts, promoting the impact that you're creating in the Triangle, both from an annual perspective and from a perspective of the pandemic. So this specific webinar, we'll talk about how to leverage the media to help tell your nonprofit story. And this specifically came out of some requests following the last webinar that we did with you guys back in May. So we hope that you will find it valuable. We hope you will learn a little bit more about how to approach the media, what stories they might find interesting, how to establish those relationships. And then, of course, you know, if there's anything that you feel like you still want to learn about at the end of this, we will have time for a Q&A. I ask that you hold any questions until the Q&A period. And if you're like me and you have the memory of a gerbil and would prefer to write it down, please feel free to drop it in the chat section. That's where we will ask people to drop questions when we get to the Q&A. So I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we can be sure to address your question at the end of it. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to David. David, take it away.
Hey, hello everybody. Excited to see those again who were here for our first webinar. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming back. Even more excited that I get to do this with my friend Laurie Wiggins. Hey, Laurie.
Hello.
And Devin, thank you for giving us this time, and United Way for giving us this time. This is a subject dear to my heart, and one that Laurie and I have been working together for a few years now around issues and subject matter of nonprofits and the media. So we're grateful for this opportunity. Devin, you want me to go ahead and share my screen? Is that good?
That's perfect.
Okay. One second. Sorry, let me get the presentation mode going here. I've got all kinds of stuff on my screen. All right, can you see that okay, Devin, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. I love it when technology cooperates. Real quick, just a 30-second snapshot of Angelo Creative. We're a nonprofit. We're a marketing firm that serves nonprofits. We are a for-profit firm, but we serve only nonprofits. We're based in Raleigh, and are just really blessed and grateful to be able to work with probably about 70 or so nonprofits a year, just providing a wide array of nonprofit services. So we're really grateful for that. If you want to learn more, you know, angelocreative.com. That sort of thing. But one thing that we really believe in is just the power of nonprofits, and just so grateful that we have such a vibrant nonprofit community in this area. And we just want to take 1 minute to thank you and thank all of our nonprofits for that. We've created just a 1-minute video to say that to you, and in what we hope is a more compelling way than I can do that. So real quick, let me play this video for you, and we'll get started. Whoops. So just thank you for all that you do. We appreciate that. We know the challenges you face. We know all of the things that are out there right now that are, you know, just really creating new barriers, but also new opportunities. So we're just really grateful for that. Laurie and I are really excited about this. Today, we're going to talk about the power of the press, leveraging the media to tell your nonprofit story. Today, I'm going to let Laurie introduce herself first, and just really, Laurie, just give us a little background about your experience in journalism.
Sure. Yeah.
What's happening.
Absolutely. I guess first disclaimer is extraordinaire is not my word. I do appreciate it. I do smile, and my heart jumps for joy to see that. So thank you, David.
Oh, well, I believe it.
Yeah. So I'm Laurie Wiggins. I'm a veteran newspaper journalist, or I guess I should say print journalist, who has been reinventing herself as print journalism sort of gives way to, technology, of course. Reinventing myself, but yet still holding on by the skin of my chinny chin chin, to still find ways to write and tell stories that I like to call, hidden gems, golden nuggets, things that people, may not think about as stories, or may not think about as things that, something that really impacts their life or somehow is interconnected with another aspect of life. And that can be people, places, or things. I wrote a column for about 10 years for the Midtown Raleigh section of the News and Observer called Midtown News, that focused on just that, people, places, things, and traditions. And have since, when they decided to get rid of their community sections, I still have been holding on and trying to write and tell some of the stories that I see, and just kind of burn my soul to be told. So now I still write for the Triangle Tribune newspaper, which is published out of Durham, and Walter Magazine. So I've, in my reinvention, have delved into a little deeper into magazine writing. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. I'm from Raleigh, went to UNC Chapel Hill back a long time ago, and have returned back to Raleigh, came back actually as part of the sandwich generation right at the time that newspapers and media was changing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Laurie.
Yep,
my name is David Chatham. I'm with Angelo Creative, senior client success consultant. As I joke, I think the emphasis is on senior. I am one of the older folks here at Angel Oak and love just the work that we do, and being able to pour my 25 years of experience in marketing and PR into nonprofits is just really a neat opportunity that I do not take for granted. And just getting to work with people like Laurie and Devin and others is just so amazing to do that. So I've certainly worked within media relations for most of my career. Most of that work was with for-profits over the years, did work with IBM and a number of other agencies here in town, and joined Angel Oak about 6 years ago, and haven't looked back since. So today we're really going to focus on the media and using the media to help tell your story in a way that is just going to help you to increase the awareness of your organization. The question that we're going to start with is, why even bother leveraging the media? Some people, and Laurie has probably heard this, and I know she's dealt with it through some career changes, but some people believe that kind of traditional media is dying or is dead. And I don't agree with that. I think it's just being consumed differently, and we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. But the reason that you really want to look at using and engaging the media in helping tell your story, one is certainly awareness. If people don't know about you, they're not going to be able to support you. And certainly there's roles for social media, there's roles for events and those sorts of things, but people still do consume news, and the media still have an influence over our culture and the communities that we live in. So awareness is certainly a feature of that. Credibility, third-party endorsement is also an important part. Even though they may not come out and say that you are the greatest in the world, just appearing in publications like Walter, like the Tribune, like the News and Observer, WRL-TV, all of those give you another level of credibility that says that people should certainly stop and take a look at that. I'm going to mention this next one, Laurie, and then I'm going to let you jump in and add some to those first three. Thought leadership, again, if your particular organization is focused on a certain issue, whether it be around justice or homelessness or addiction recovery or any of those things, putting yourself out there as a thought leader in the community around those issues, again, gives you that level of credibility, gives you a level of awareness, and the media can help tell that story to the audiences that are likely going to care about that. So, Laurie, any thoughts on kind of those first three?
I think you're right on point with all three of them. And the only thing I would have added, I think you captured in the third part in terms of thought leadership. And I think it's important in terms of awareness, in terms of credibility, in terms of brand building, to recognize and take opportunities to put yourself out there by weighing in on issues, stories that may not be your story, if that makes any sense. I think there's a lot of issues that nonprofits cover are interconnected in one way or another. And I think it's, it may be, a sister nonprofit's spotlight at the time, but there may be an opportunity, and I think it's important to look for opportunities to weigh in on those stories as well. And I think that's what you're talking about when you say thought leadership, that it's, sort of, look outside the box. And, think of ways that you might weigh in on, the hot topic. I do have an example of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's sort of, it might be a little murky, but it's the one that jumps out at me. There's a recent story that I worked on about a gentleman who was named Caregiver of the Year for a home, I guess it's an in-home and in-facility personal care agency. And the pitch came over about the award that this gentleman had won, but she also said he could talk to you about what it's like, going into people's homes now that COVID is here. So had the award not been there, it would have still been a prime opportunity for that agency to say, hey, we've got some experience with COVID, especially as, nursing homes and different places, have spikes and that sort of thing. So I just think thought leadership kind of, covers a lot of stuff and is an important thought.
I think that's a great example. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, Laurie, a little later. Okay. But yeah, just being able to think beyond your own organization and think outside of that circle that bubble that a lot of us live in, and think about what is going to give the most value to that reporter. And we're going to certainly talk about that. Right. The next three, when I read about an organization that we've been a part of in some way, either as a donor or a board member, or maybe as a client, as a service provider to that client, I really feel a sense of connection and pride about seeing them get coverage, especially if it's positive. But certainly when when there is coverage that is there, that type of content, to go to number 5, is created that you can share, that you can put out there, that really just reinforces the fact that this organization is worthy of support, that it has a place in our community, and that it serves an important function and makes some significant impact. So, being able to get that coverage and secure coverage with people like Laurie and other reporters, giving them a good story to tell or helping them to find that good story to tell, creates additional content for you, which then also creates search engine optimization support, which might be getting a little wonky, but if someone's looking to support an organization that focuses on homelessness or addiction recovery or social justice issues, if they just go in and search for that, the likelihood that something else comes up, that your organization comes up first is higher because you do have that third-party validation of a newspaper or some other media. So this all plays together and creates a really firm foundation for helping to tell your story and also get you more noticed, whether it be digitally or whether it be in the community. So it's certainly still a wise move to have media relations or media outreach be a part of your organization's strategy to engage the community. I'm a big fan of alliteration, so excuse my my 5 C's here, but when you do leverage the media, there's really 5 things that Laurie and I have talked about and kind of said, you know, here's the 5 things. If you really do these well, you have a higher chance of success. Having the right contacts, really establishing yourself as a credible source, having the right content, that right story to tell, being cooperative with the media, even under some strenuous circumstances, being cooperative with the media is critical to getting that story out there, and having some compassion for them and the challenges that they face is critical. And we're going to walk through each one of these, but it is really about those, you know, 5. If you can get those 5 elements as part of your outreach effort, then you're likely going to have success. The first one we're going to talk about is contacts, and it really is about kind of who you know in the sense of who's doing what. If you want your organization to appear in a certain publication, whether that's Walter Magazine or whether that is News and Observer or the Tribune or WRAL Television, you need to consume that particular publication or that particular outlet so that you know what do they like, what stories do they like to tell. Laurie, can you give a little bit of experience about that? I know Walter is somewhat particular about stories they want to tell. I mean, I know all publications are, but you know, what does that mean in terms of if people reach out to you and they're pitching a story, is it pretty obvious that they haven't read Walter Magazine sometimes?
Well, it can be, and I think that the difference really is the purpose of, the media, newspapers, for example, and WRAL and online organizations want it out there now. With newspapers, I think they're more focused on making sure that they tell the stories that represent the community. And a lot of times those stories don't necessarily have a time element. They don't always apply or connect with something, large that's happening across the country, for example. So I think what's important when you read is to learn a couple of things. Number one, what's their niche? Where can we fit in there? The other thing with magazines I've come to learn is they usually have a theme for every month. And you got to learn that. And it doesn't change very much. So once you read 12 issues and kind of figure out, what's happening in January in that magazine, February, June, July, September, December, that's a good way to just kind of navigate, timing for what you have going on.
Thank you, Laurie.
I think that's, yeah.
Thank you. Another really important thing is to some people really take a shotgun approach to media relations or a kind of a carpet bombing. I hate to be so violent in my, my descriptions, but they really take this broad approach to just pitching every reporter that they possibly can and hope that something sticks.
Right.
What really works is identifying the reporters who cover or really care about your particular issue. And it's really simple to do. You know, when I started working with Angel Oak about 6 years ago, I believe Laurie was kind of at the height of the media, the Midtown Muse column.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started looking at where our clients might fit in, what we found was that clients who serve in Laurie's region that she's covering certainly were more of interest to her. So when I made that connection with Laurie, it was like, hey, I see you cover this. I just wanted to be on your radar for, you know, as a resource for you. I don't even know if I pitched you the first time that I connected with you, Laurie. I just said, hey, I love what you're doing.
I don't remember either. And, you know, I was thinking the other day, it's been years. Has it been, it has to have been more than a decade, David.
It's close.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to think back that far, but yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But knowing who those reporters are, and it's pretty simple. Just do a Google search, or go to that website, go to that app, wherever, and just search on the issue that you care about, that your organization focuses on, and see if and who is reporting on that. If it's homelessness or justice or you know, addiction recovery or you know, mental health awareness or any of those things, see who's covering that. And it may vary sometimes, but you'll usually find some trend of someone who's covering that. And then just start that conversation, and we'll get to how that works. But just connect. That's the next one. Just connect with them and say, hey, even if it's just saying, what an amazing article that was. Thank you for doing that. It doesn't have to be, every communication with a reporter doesn't have to be a pitch. You can establish and build relationships with reporters. They're people too, right, Laurie?
Yeah, and I think that, well, and you know, what's important about that is that you're on their radar. You know, if it's a familiar name, for example, or somebody that you've worked with before, I think it's just human nature that, you know, if you've gotten that credibility, you know, you've already established the credibility, then, you know, my immediate thought is, you know, David's got a good story for me. You know, let me, you know, be sure to, you know, he's one or two on the list of callbacks versus, oh, I'll give him a call tomorrow. I think the other important thing is to know that most newspapers and stations and magazines have people who are considered general assignment. And so if you have something that doesn't quite fit in healthcare, well, it's not quite government, it's not quite education, then always remember that they're, you know, to ask about the general assignment reporter, you know, so there are going to be some reporters who cover a little bit of everything, and it'll be tough to identify them as a certain subject person. So that's an important thing to remember.
And you know,
David, you're absolutely right.
Go ahead, Laurie.
One thing that has gone a long way for our relationship, and, you know, subconsciously at some points and very consciously at others, is the fact that you've just checked in, you know, to say hi. And, you know, I've thought, you know, I haven't heard from David lately. I wonder what, you know, what Angel has going on. So that's really important. The relationship building, knowing your audience, so to speak. That's what journalists always want to do, is know our audience. And it's sort of the same thing for, you know, for nonprofits and people on the other side of the coin. Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful you returned my call, Laurie. I'm very grateful.
I'm glad you called. Because that's the other thing, you know, journalists people are always looking for news. It's not, you know, it's not, I mean, it's a mutual thing. You know, we don't feel like we're doing you guys a favor we oftentimes feel, oh, thank God David called, thank goodness X, Y, and Z is happening. And I've talked to so-and-so in the past, let me give them a call. So that's just kind of how it works. I think it's definitely mutually beneficial. So I don't want, you guys to walk away feeling like, you're at our mercy. We're very much at your mercy as well, very much so.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll run through these last three just real quick, but add value to Laurie's point. Think outside of your own issue a little bit. How can you add a little additional value to the story? Even if it's recommending that Laurie talk, or whoever the reporter is, talk to someone else at a different organization to get their opinion. It's only going to bolster your credibility. And even though you may not get all 30 column inches or 10 column inches of this story, the fact that Laurie can trust you for the next one is going to really pay off in the long run. And don't give up. I don't want you to stalk these reporters, but they're busy. They get lots of emails. If you are feeling really strongly about your particular issue, try a couple of times or a few times to reach out, and just, and maybe it's to try a different reporter even and say, hey, you know what? I reached out to Laurie. I know she's busy. I thought I would just touch base with you. Right. And then be flexible. The reporters work on their own deadlines and their own schedules. So just really be flexible and mindful of that, of what that looks like.
And also remember that we aren't the decider, if I may.
Yeah.
We're not we have to take the information and sell it. Even if, unlike me, I'm a contract person. So everything that I write, I pretty much have to pitch unless it's assigned. And I've been fortunate to still have that happen. But we have to take it to the editor and, try to sell it to them. So, there is, we're sort of the middleman.
Laurie, what are some things people can do that would equip you to go sell that to the editor? What are some things that they can do or say that would help you?
Be ready for conversation. I think, David, be ready to kind of hear the reporters and be able to detect as a reporter saying, I'm just kind of thinking how I might, sort of be ready with a follow-up. Well, if that doesn't work, another aspect of this is, X, Y, and Z. Aside from ABC, we've also got X, Y, and Z, and that might be a way that you can sell it, or gain some interest. But, understanding that when you call a reporter or you send something, and then follow up, which is very important. Just because you've emailed something doesn't mean that it's gotten the attention that you want it to get. So follow up is very important. Hey, did you get my email? What do you think about it? And I think that's where the conversation starts.
Yeah.
And it's hugely important. I don't think, unless a reporter, is on deadline, then we're all about conversation, all about opportunities to bat things around and just kind of figure it out so that it works,
Great. Yeah, thank you, Laurie. I know with us in the past, also things like just having decent pictures to share with you guys that would help tell the story, simple things like that, and having a source that can speak to you pretty quickly, and just those sorts of things I think are helpful too.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're moving on and beyond contacts, and then looking just which outlet makes the most sense. Laurie mentioned a little while ago about audiences. Knowing the audiences and who your organization really wants to get in touch with. The challenge that a lot of nonprofits that I've run into with nonprofits in terms of marketing is they just want to speak to everybody. And that's great in some ways, but if you just want to speak to everybody, a lot of times you're speaking to nobody. So
Mhm.
really understanding those audiences, Walter has a particular audience, Indie Week has a particular audience, UNC TV, WRAL, all of those, News Observer, all those have a particular audience, and that can be geographic, that can also be demographic, also psychographic. What are they thinking? So understanding the differences there, and I'm not going to get into what those are here, but understanding what those differences are. Part of it comes by reading it, part of it comes by understanding or consuming that media, but take the time to understand which ones make the most sense. Otherwise, if you're just, again, going out and mass communicating with all of these organizations, it's going to be some wasted energy, because not all of them are going to care about your story. Some of them may care about one of your stories at any given moment, but it's not likely that every one of them is going to care about your story at the same time. So just think about what's happening. And to Laurie's point, understanding what is the rhythm of that organization, understanding other things like what's currently happening. Are there riots and protests going on in downtown Raleigh that you're probably not going to break through right now? So maybe you hold off on that pitch. So just which outlets are they doing? What are they covering? And does it make sense to reach out? Laurie, any thoughts there?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's just it's know your audience, have a point of contact, and I think you can be very intentional, strategic, and intentional and strategic about who it is you pinpoint, and who it is you have a cell phone number for. Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right about that.
The next thing we're going to talk about real quick is credibility. When I sent this to Devin, her first question was, "What's up with the gorilla?" I said, "There's a story, trust me." Back years ago, when I was working in a more mainstream agency, I was working in the press. I was working with certain media, and I was on the phone with a reporter one time, and I believe in honesty and transparency as a PR person. That there are some things I'm probably not going to say, but if I don't want to say certain things, and I'm probably not going to reach out to a reporter and try to pitch them on a story that might create some level of distrust or controversy, right? So I was talking to this reporter, and he said, "David, you know what? You're an albino gorilla." I said, "What in the world are you talking about?" He said, "You are different than most media relations people. You are somewhat honest and have some integrity. You know where those boundaries are." And that to me was just the biggest compliment. So I don't mean to brag, do the humble brag thing, but if you create a relationship that is honest, that has integrity, that proves that you're reliable, you're going to go much further than if you come at it from the sense of just trying to get over, that you want to get that story in there at all costs. So just really approaching it with that. I kind of like the picture of the albino gorilla too, but it gives a chance for a story. So I don't know, Laurie, have you ever run into people who may not be quite so reliable or are quite so honest?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know that I think the one example that always pops to mind for me, I don't think the person meant any harm, and it wasn't a nonprofit, but she presented herself as a PR person, but she really was the subject, if that makes any sense. She was trying to do both. And I guess, maybe not wanting to pay a PR person, I don't know. But just, in that case, she misrepresented who she was, first of all. And of course, that's, a dishonesty, red flag of dishonesty. And I think sometimes people oversell, and that causes the reporter to oversell. And, of course.
And then they underdeliver, right?
Exactly. And that, you know, goes to credibility, reliability, integrity, honesty. And it also ends in nothing being written sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's best if you're having to resort to subterfuge, it's better just not to pitch the story. So you're going to be better off. Finally, real
Right.
quick.
Or that would be the perfect time if you really feel like you need to be heard, or, you know, you want to try to get it out there. I think another, you know, part of honesty is saying, you know, maybe this is, you know, we have something for your briefs. You know, something, you know, that'll just let people know that it's happening. Or it's also the perfect opportunity at that point, I think, to try to feed into another story.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
finally, reporters are human. They do make mistakes. So number 5, stand up for yourself and the facts. Be respectful, but if they do get something wrong, just follow up and let them know that they want to be accurate. They want to be correct. So just, you know, say, hey, very grateful for the story. We appreciate that. I did notice this one piece that is wrong. I wonder if I could get a correction. And
Right.
if it's a legitimate request, I've not been turned down. I've had to fight for some of those sometime and justify them, but most of the time, reporters and editors they want to get it right, even though there's all this fake news and all this other stuff they say out there. There is, you know.
Yeah, and if I can just add one little thing about that, you know, even though reporters want, you know, the story and we want bylines and we, you know, we want to keep that rolling, and, you know, cover the issue. At the same time, we want to do that not just for the byline count or anything like that, but also because we care about the issues, and because we're supposed to be objective, then we really do rely on our sources, you know, to bring the compassion and to bring the, you know, the energy and the heat behind whatever the issue is. So I do want to just say we are human, and a lot of the issues that we cover, we do really care about.
Yeah. And things can get complex and, you know, kind of confusing sometimes. So, you know, our job is to really work with that. So, we're going to camp here for just a little bit, and we may end up skipping a couple of slides at the end so we can leave room for questions. What is a good story? What makes a good story? You know, to me, these are just kind of 6 really quick things. Is it unique? Does it have value? Is it relevant? Does it fit the niche or the format of that particular publication? Is it timely? And ultimately the question is, would you read it? Is this something that you would really care about? So, Laurie, when someone pitches you a story, how do these elements play into whether you decide that you want to pursue it or not?
Very heavily. And I think, you know, because, you know, people, first of all, you know, when the subject is a person who has done something, experienced something, contributed something, then that's an immediate opportunity for a reader to identify with, become curious about, learn about, emulate, join. So I think people like to read about people, and they like to read about people because, you know, there's something in us that wants to either, you know, compare or, you know, be like, or outdo.
Keep it real.
No, it really is. It really is that simple. So I think that, you know, as far as it being unique, I think that it depends on, that can come in so many different forms.
Laurie,
could
you
be.
wrote a story recently, I think for Walter. If I recall, I want to say it was some musical basis. Do you remember that? Is that?
Yeah, I've done a couple of them, and one of them, and this is probably what you're talking about, maybe Mary Williams, who,
Yes, that's it.
yeah, has a very unique story, and that's what I was going to say, that it may be a very common thing. She sings, she's a gospel singer, but what she's done is she, through collaboration with Tim Tyson, who wrote Blood Done Sign My Name. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's about a story, a racially motivated murder out of Oxford years and years and years ago. But she connected with him, and she tells the story of, helped him tell the story of civil rights and, just the African American journey through music, and educates people about how, gospel music really does tell that story, and how it helps strengthen and improve the lives of, and that sort of thing for African Americans for years, from the slave fields of slavery, all the way up through through Jim Crow and civil rights, and even today. So just her delivery and her way of doing it and her way of coming to that was very unique. So and that's great example, David, actually, because it's a prime example of how uniqueness comes in several different forms, even if it's a common everyday thing.
Right.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I thought that was, and I think that was one that you kind of identified, right? That you saw. So I thought that was really
Right. Yeah, that
great.
was one that I pitched. That yeah, you're right. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you for remembering that.
No, hey, real quick, guys, we're going to get into Q&A here in just a minute. Where is the story? This can be around your cause or issue, like we just talked about. It can be, Devin actually mentioned this yesterday when we were going over our presentation, was what are you doing differently? What is your strategic approach? A lot of folks are looking at that now, how you're approaching these issues in an innovative way, in a unique, a novel way. What does that look like? It may be your recipients, where you're able to tell stories that really focus on the folks who are benefiting and being impacted by the services that you have. There's some amazing success stories out there, or even some stories that aren't so successful yet, but they're leading that way. Some of your staff have amazing stories. Don't forget that they're internally, that some of those stories are compelling. Some of your donors, about why they support you or how they got invested in a cause. Your community, what does that look like from a broader perspective? And maybe even your partners like United Way, Devin, might be a great opportunity to maybe tell that story about partnerships and how everybody coming together makes sense. So stories are kind of everywhere, but if you're not looking for them, you may miss some really great ones. So be really aware of what the opportunities are. And I know everybody's busy just trying to do what they do and serve the people they serve. So it's really helpful to have somebody on your staff who kind of has an eye out for this, but everybody can tell a story. Everybody can identify that. So don't miss those opportunities there. Real quick, some of the tools that you can use to tell your story to reporters are the pitch, the press relief, what I call a brief, social media, dynamic content. This is a recent pitch that I wrote to Brooke Kane at News and Observer, just trying to get one of our clients some attention and coverage around their thrift store. And it was just I've known Brooke for years, just like I've known Laurie. I've known Brooke, just said, hey, hope you're well. I saw this piece because I read the publication. I saw this piece on thrift stores. Our client wasn't in it. We wanted them to be. I just asked if they would add it. The great thing about digital media is it can be edited real time. So even if you weren't in the original story, if you go back and ask, they can add you to that story. And it's just a great, easy resource. You said, man, I wish I would have been in there. Well, you can be in there if you reach out to that reporter and just ask them if they will add you. Laurie, any thoughts on that real quick? And then Devin, we're going right to Q&A.
No, I think that's great. And I think that is a prime example of why it's important to, when you can develop a relationship, because I'm not sure that would have happened if it were a cold call, you know what I mean? Or a cold email, like, okay, who's this guy? Oops, next time. More so than, she probably maybe even felt like, gosh, I should have called David. You know what I mean?
I don't know if that was the case, but
yeah,
maybe she will next time.
Probably so. Probably so.
And I did that same email or same kind of pitch out to the different publications, and we appeared in 3 of those different publications within a couple of days, and it resulted in, just tens of thousands of dollars donation, hundreds and thousands of pounds of food, and it was just a really great story. We talked about this, cooperate with the reporters, have compassion. I love Laurie, and I just want to make her job easier, whatever I can do there to do that. So,
and I can feel that too. So,
well, thank you, Laurie.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I feel the feeling is mutual. So what? Relationships matter. Storytelling is critical. More competition for less space. Make sure you're using that to your advantage. The media moves people to action, and people still consume the news. It's just differently. So what do you do next? Identify those relationships, start that relationship, identify your stories, speak into relevant, timely topics, respond to those stories with the reporter, get engaged, be persistent, and then just crush it. You guys are all doing amazing work. Every one of you has a story to tell. I know Laurie is open to hearing from you. This is her email.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. And if you have a story, feel free to share that with her. Devin, you're sharing this recording, right? So they'll be able to get that.
Absolutely. So we'll follow up after, likely tomorrow or the day after, with an email to everybody that will have the recording, so you guys can rewatch if you feel like you missed any of the content. You can share it with your team. You can find the emails. And also I'm here. You all have my email if you have any questions. If you want us to expand on something, I'm happy to take the time to chat about it. Personally, David and Laurie, thank you both so much for taking time out of your day. I know we are all so busy. Everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think this is hugely valuable, especially now. And one of the things you guys touched on is that human to human relationship. And that's something that has been such a valuable lesson learned for me in my career, and something that somebody taught me very early on, and I can tell you, I shared this in the last webinar, I believe, but one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was doing strictly public relations was make friends, not contacts.
That's right.
And there's a level of empathy that we carry as representatives of nonprofits that very naturally transcends into relationships elsewhere. And I'd encourage people to lean on that, because I got to tell you, I know if you're reaching out to a reporter that you admire or a publication that you hold in high esteem, it can feel terrifying. To feel like you're not going to portray everything correctly and perfectly. And I can tell you, early on in my career, I pitched the New York Times, and I had a script, and I tried to prepare, and it failed miserably because I was a robot. I was not a human. So I do want to take this time, to open this up for question and answer. We've got, 6 minutes or so left. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
You did such a great job, Laurie. You left them speechless.
Oh, shoot. Come on.
They're all on their second monitors writing pitches right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, good.
Yeah.
Good. And
Laurie,
I just think, we're, journalists are not monsters. We sit around and think and try to figure out, the best way to approach something, the best words to use to convey it. And you guys are the people who help us do that. Absolutely.
Yep.
No doubt.
And Laurie, one thing that you touched on that I just wanted to share with everybody, you touched on the editorial calendars that print publications have and how they schedule things out throughout the year in themes. I just wanted to share, in case anybody's not aware, more often than not, those editorial calendars are available on the publication's website.
That's true. That's true.
So you can plan ahead. And the other thing to note too is that you might see that next month the magazine is covering a topic that is relevant to your organization, but they've likely already written those stories.
Yes.
So think several months out if you're looking at print publications.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can say, and David, you know this, the last story we worked on, you know, that I called you about, was that in June?
Yeah.
Did we talk in June?
I think it was late June, early July. Yeah.
Yeah. And that story initially was going to run in August.
Yeah.
But my deadline was like mid-June.
Yeah.
It has since changed, and that happens sometimes. So guys, please know that it isn't always anything to do with the story, anything to do with the reporter. Sometimes the timeline changes in, you know, magazines or, you know, long form pieces.
Yeah.
But yeah, the deadline is pretty early. Devin, you're absolutely right, and that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Well,
And just, continue to look for those opportunities when there is an article that you find helpful and you find productive, that is positive in your, in terms of the community that you serve or any of those things. Reach out and let the reporter know that you appreciate that they covered that and in the way that they covered it. And that, I always appreciate, or have always had really good feedback from reporters. Sometimes they'll answer, sometimes they won't, but, I'll say, hey, I caught that piece. Really great. Thank you for doing that. And I don't ask anything from them necessarily. I just want them to know that I'm paying attention and that. And
we live for that. We live for that, because oftentimes, unless somebody calls and says that, we really, don't know, especially if it's a one-time story. Now, if it's a story that's got legs and is going to keep going and going and going, you kind of hear back from folks, or, talk to them again and they mention it. But otherwise, a lot of times you just don't know. And my husband often asks me, are you going to call and find out if they like the story? And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm going to wait and see if they call, and if not, I'm going to assume it was all right. Yeah. But making that call goes a long way.
Well, Laurie, we do have a question from Renee. Aside from audience, is there any other consideration with looking at different media channels? So other than readership or viewership, what else makes sense when you're looking at when to go after certain or go pitch certain?
Reach. Yeah,
what does that
circulation is huge. But I write for the Triangle Tribune, and I know that that audience isn't going to be as big on the surface. But the Triangle Tribune is part of the Charlotte Post. And I've had several stories to double up. So to me, that means it's had circulation from Durham to Charlotte. So that's, that's a much wider audience than you would think saying it ran in the Triangle Tribune. And then newspapers also have what is it called? Partnerships with what are they called? David, AP,
wire services.
Wires, yeah.
Wire services, yeah.
Yeah, have partnerships with wire services. So there's opportunities there for your reach to grow. But I think that's the most important thing, aside from audience, is how many people are you going to reach and where are they? Yeah.
And also, knowing which channel also is your story. if your story isn't super visual, it may not be the best for television, is one thing too. If you don't have a lot of things happening, or if it just, you know, if it's just a talking head, it's just not as attractive. It doesn't mean that they won't cover it, but it's not as attractive. So, you know, you might be mindful, does it make more sense to pitch a print publication that's going to maybe be more open to that? You know, and then understanding too what, if there is a certain series happening, or if something's going on in the community, just understanding where that particular publication has devoted their resources, and following that to see what they're kind of caring about right now as you're going to pitch them is another part. Because if they have devoted significant resources, and one way, and Laurie can, I don't know if she'll attest to this or not, but one thing today, more media channels have relationships with sponsors and advertisers that sometimes drive some of the coverage. So there is some, if there's an event going on, say Bluegrass Wide Open downtown Raleigh, right? The News Observer and WRAL and all those are big supporters of that. So they're likely to put more resources towards that particular event during that time. So just knowing who those are, and the others who don't may be looking for other stories because they're not promoting it quite as much. So just trying to understand how the media is engaging. Real quick,
Yeah,
Ashley has a, oh, go ahead, Laurie.
Real quick, as far as photos are concerned, they're extremely important. If you can take them, if you have them, particularly as newspapers and other entities start going to reporters doing it all. And then as far as the subject of those photos, people, action. I received a
or animals, Laurie, right?
Huh?
Or animals, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, albino gorillas, right?
Yeah, right.
But I received a group of about 6 photos, and it was a giveaway. So, but all the photos were of gift bags, boxes full of food, that sort of thing, and we just can't use it. And if you have people in them, be sure that you can identify, because we like to identify whoever's in the picture.
Real quick, Ashley, I have one question, and Devin will stop. In your experience, will more regional outlets pick up local stories? Our nonprofit is based in Chapel Hill and Carrboro, and I wonder if triangle-wide outlets will cover us. You know, my experience there is if you can find some connection between those communities, or it's an issue that crosses over, they're certainly more open to that. So finding that connection for them and not making them make that connection is going to help you with that. Laurie, your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I think that's a prime time to give a call and weigh in on, you know, so-called bigger issues, and, you know, get yourself on the radar that way. I think that's the prime time to do that. If you feel like you're on the outskirts, get yourself in the center. Good
job. Yeah, I love that, Laurie. Thank you. Devin, we'll pass it back to you. Thank you for letting us go over just a few minutes.
Oh, absolutely. This is great information. And thank you both again for taking the time to provide your expertise and your insight. I think this is a topic that is easy to struggle with if you don't have the experience. So having the insight from 2 folks who are, you know, well established in these areas, well experienced, and also very kind, I think is helpful. So thank you. And thank you to everybody from our partners and local nonprofits who joined. You know, we're here to support you. We plan to continue providing these webinar experiences. So if there's anything that you've been wanting to learn about that you haven't yet, please feel free to shoot me an email. We're keeping a running list of subjects. So thank you guys so much, and we hope to see you soon.